Imagine you are young, fit, and following a strict low-carb or ketogenic diet. You feel great, but your annual physical returns a standard blood panel with an alarmingly high LDL cholesterol number. That initial panic often sends people straight to the internet, where they discover a popular hack to bypass a high LDL diagnosis. Influencers tell them to order an advanced nuclear magnetic resonance, or NMR, lipoprotein test, a high-tech procedure that uses magnetic fields to analyze blood, making the results feel medically authoritative. The NMR test promises to look past the total cholesterol mass and analyze the physical size of the individual particles. It divides results into two camps: Pattern B, meaning the particles are small and dense, and Pattern A, where the particles are described as large and fluffy. According to countless online forums, if your results come back as Pattern A, you are safe. The prevailing logic is that these large, buoyant particles bounce harmlessly off your artery walls, meaning you can ignore that high LDL count and skip the lipid-lowering medication. It is easy to see why this loophole is so appealing. It offers a scientific-sounding validation that lets you dismiss scary medical data without having to change your lifestyle. But if you take that NMR report to a cardiologist today, they will point you straight to the 2026 ACC/AHA dyslipidemia guidelines. These guidelines represent the consensus of the American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology, and they explicitly warn against using NMR subclass testing to estimate your cardiovascular risk. The guidelines give routine advanced lipoprotein subclass testing a formal rating of Class 3, no benefit. The clinical stance is unambiguous. Having a bloodstream full of large, fluffy cholesterol does not grant you immunity from plaque buildup and heart disease. We are left with a massive, dangerous gap. Internet health gurus promote NMR testing as definitive proof of safety, while the world's leading cardiologists have officially classified it as useless for deciding whether you need treatment. The belief that particle size dictates heart health did not come out of nowhere. Early observational studies noticed a clear trend. People who had predominantly small, dense LDL particles suffered significantly more heart attacks. But correlation is not causation. To understand what was really happening, researchers had to look at the biological traffic of lipid transport. When insulin resistance develops, the liver pumps large, triglyceride-rich particles into the bloodstream. As they circulate, enzymes strip the triglycerides for energy. The particles shrink, leaving small, dense LDL. These small particles are a byproduct, not the biological driver of plaque formation. By confusing a symptom for a root cause, online communities elevated large and fluffy particles as a sign of health. They missed the underlying metabolic mechanics at play. The true driver of atherosclerosis is a protein called apolipoprotein B, or ApoB. Despite their different sizes, every atherogenic particle carries exactly one ApoB tag. This acts as a barcode, allowing a blood test to count the exact number of plaque-building particles. When clinical researchers adjusted their data to account for this total particle count, the danger of small, dense LDL vanished. Once the number of ApoB particles was known, the physical size of those particles lost all independent predictive value. Take two hypothetical patients with the identical high ApoB count. One has a bloodstream full of small particles, and the other is full of large, fluffy particles. Because the total number of atherogenic particles is identical, their cardiovascular risk is broadly the same. Large and fluffy describes the cargo. But arterial plaque isn't built by the fluffiness of the cargo, it's driven by the total volume of delivery trucks crossing into the endothelium and crashing into the artery wall over a lifetime. The total particle number is the biological exposure metric. A high ApoB made up of large, buoyant particles means you just have more particles, and each one is atherogenic, rendering their individual size irrelevant. Online proponents of the large and fluffy theory point to studies on lean mass hyperresponders, athletic people who develop striking rises in LDL on carbohydrate-restricted diets, as proof of safety. A cornerstone of that argument, the Keto-CTA study, was recently retracted by its own authors and editors over methodological concerns. When the primary data was reevaluated, it showed that non-calcified plaque volume increased from a near zero baseline over just 1 year. Progression, not stability, was the reality. The medical advice is definitive. If your standard LDL is high, Paying out of pocket for an NMR panel to see if your particles are pattern A adds cost to your medical bill, but it adds no decision value. The 2026 guidelines offer a specific alternative. If you suspect your standard LDL cholesterol test is misleading, do not check the particle size. Instead, order a standardized ApoB test to count the actual particles in your blood. And if your risk remains borderline or intermediate, there is a definitive physical check, the coronary artery calcium, or CAC score. A CAC scan checks your heart to see if plaque is actively calcifying in your arteries. Managing long-term cardiovascular risk means measuring what actually damages the arteries. Prioritizing the proven metrics of total particle volume and physical plaque buildup, rather than relying on internet trends about cargo size, is the scientifically valid way to protect your heart.